Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today here on Point of View. Well, the primaries are over, and this seemed like a very good time to kind of look back over the primary season, look ahead to the general election, and address a number of lingering issues. So today, an open line for your comments and questions. I certainly want to talk about this election. It was a historic election for a variety of different reasons. A first woman to actually secure the nomination for President of the United States. First time in decades in which you've had somebody who is not a politician, not involved in the political process, a businessman, actually run for the presidency. Got to go back at least to Herbert Hoover to have something like that. So there are lots of historical elements of this, and I'm going to give you kind of a rundown on the count, both on the Republican side and the Democratic side. But then also want to look at some of the questions for the candidates themselves as they pivot from the private and primary election, which is really focused just on the people that already agree with you. In some respects, it's sort of like a private primary, because a few of these particular primary elections were open, but most of the time, especially when you look at those individuals that voted either for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, they were people that were inclined to vote for a Republican anyway, or a Democrat anyway. Now, what happens? And so there are some questions that have been posed to us. Matter of fact, there's one article in The Hill, 5 burning post-primary questions. We'll look at that for just a minute. And then on the offing that some people are saying maybe this is not the best choice. And I want to certainly hear from some of you today, because that's what we're going to focus on. If you say, I really don't like either of the two candidates, what are my other options? Well, one of the options we're going to talk about is something that was actually ventured today by Hugh Hewitt. He's been on this program with us before. He's a talk show host, used to be in California, now in Washington, D.C., with the Salem Radio Network, and he's calling for the convention to change the rules so that an outside candidate can run and actually replace Donald Trump. That is, of course, one issue. May not happen, but the fact that there are visible people making those kinds of claims, including, I thought I'd read just a little bit from David French, who for a while flirted with the possibility of running as a third-party candidate. We'll look at that. And then we'll spend some time also looking at third-party candidates. There are quite a number of them out there, and I won't go into all of them, but I'll talk about a few. Gary Johnson, for example, who is the Libertarian Party candidate, and that is one that we'll go into some details so you know who he is. You have, of course, the Green Party, and you have a variety of others, but you also have Darrell Castle of the Constitution Party. So wanted to talk about that and some of the questions that maybe you're starting to have, and that is, can I vote for any of those two Republican Democratic candidates? Could I vote for a third-party candidate? Do I just skip that on the ballot? And, of course, I'm telling all of you that you should vote. Now, I'm not telling you who to vote for, and I'm not saying that you have to vote for every candidate, but just let's recognize the fact that most of you are in states where there are a lot of other elections. Matter of fact, all of you are in some state where you have a member of the House of Representatives running for election or re-election, 435 races there. Then you have 34 U.S. Senate races. Then we have 12 states which will have elections for governors, and 44 states, almost every place where we broadcast here on Point of View, which will have elections for their state legislatures. So there are other candidates to vote for, even if you have some questions about who you may or may not vote for at the top of the ticket. So those are just a few kind of overview
perspectives that I want to give over the next 2 hours. But at any point along the way, if I say something or you want to say something, you are welcome to join us. We're going to have an open line here today. It's been a while since we've really had a chance to get into some of the politics of this and how the Electoral College works and what Hillary Clinton must do to win, what Donald Trump must do to win, whether a third-party candidate has any chance, and all sorts of other issues. So if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Let's go to the Republicans first. Pretty simple. Last night you had 5 different primaries. No surprise, Donald Trump won all of those, so that he ended up with 1,536 delegates, 1,536. Now, in addition to the number of delegates which he has, which was more than the requisite 1,237 that was needed, it also is very intriguing because he actually won more votes than anyone that ever has run before. He has set a primary vote record of 1.4 million votes, and so as a result, made a big deal about that last night. And so this is important to look at in terms of those situations. And so again, the previous record was that he exceeded it, and if you start looking at some of those issues, you can begin to recognize that that was a very successful venture for Donald Trump, who this time last year started to move from single digits in the polls to double digits in the polls. And I think that illustrates again how so few people predicted what was going to take place. But for those of you that want to know this number, you needed 1,237 delegates to win. He has 1,536. Now, it's worth mentioning just in passing that Ted Cruz still has delegates that are pledged to him, 559. Marco Rubio still has some delegates that are pledged to him, 165. John Kasich still has some delegates pledged to him, 161. And even if they are not the nominee, and they will not be, they still, through their delegates, have an influence on the party platform. And this is something we've talked about before with people like Kelly Shackelford or Phyllis Schlafly or others who have been on that platform committee. Once we know who some of those individuals are, I'll see if we can do an interview with them, both before the Republican convention and especially after, to see what kind of various deals were made and what sort of comments were actually brought about. There used to be times, for example, when they would want to put something in the platform and the party leaders, either those associated with, say, John McCain or Mitt Romney, they would go behind a screen, talk, and then come back and say, no, we're not going to do that, or yes, we can do that. So we'll see how that plays out in terms of the Republican Party platform. But just before we take our first break, let me mention that there were 5 primaries for the Republicans. There were 6 for the Democrats. Both California, Montana, New Jersey, North Dakota, New Mexico, and South Dakota. And technically, they're not quite finished because next week at this time, there'll be one last primary in the District of Columbia. Only 20 delegates at stake. But the big issue there, and I'd love to hear from some of you that are Democrats or certainly have followed the Democratic Party, because if you look at, for example, the number of delegates that Hillary Clinton has won, it's about 2,100. The number of delegates Bernie Sanders won is about 1,800, so within about 300 of each other. But once you add the 571 superdelegates, then you can see that the number becomes almost a 900 delegate difference. And this is, of course, one of the big issues that I am sure is going to show up at the convention, because if even those superdelegates were split, or if 2/3 of them went for Bernie Sanders and 1/3 went for Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders would be the nominee. So it is, I think, interesting to recognize how important these particular decisions are, because without even the one she won last night, and she won 257 out of California, without the superdelegates, Hillary Clinton did not have enough to actually go over their number, which is 2,382. You can see why everybody from Bernie Sanders to even Donald Trump have said the system is rigged. And so we'll come back and talk a little bit about that, but also talk about what these candidates need to do to win. But perhaps you've already got some thoughts about whether you could or could not vote for one of those candidates. I'd love to hear from you. 1-800-351-1212. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
A third of all young adults are single, broke, and living in their parents' home. That's how some are describing the latest results from the Pew Research Center study of the millennial generation. More young adults are now living with their parents than with a spouse or a partner. This is a tipping point for the first time in modern history. About 32% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 34 are living in their parents' home, compared with 31% who are married or living with a partner in their own household. The remaining 36% live alone, are single parents, or live in dorms or with other relatives. One researcher explained that this was a much different transition from previous generations. In the past, setting up new families was more typical than what we find today. In many ways, this shows the postponement of marriage. This is likely due to both lifestyle choices and economics. It's worth noting that some of these trends were taking place before the economic downturn 8 years ago. But economics is another obvious reason for more young people living at home. They face a difficult labor market and therefore are unable to live independently. That is why fewer and fewer of them are married or even living with someone. These economic realities are even worse for men without a college degree and for people of color. The highest percentage of men living with parents are black and Hispanic men. The lowest percentage are men with college degrees. Wages for all men have stagnated over the last few decades, and the labor participation rate has dropped significantly. None of this is helping improve the housing market or other aspects of the economy. If you don't own a home, you aren't likely to be spending money on appliances, furniture, and other household items. All of this merely demonstrates that the image of a millennial living in his or her parents' home isn't just a stereotype, it's reality. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kerby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
I'd like to join our conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. Just before we take a call, let me just pick up that one last point, and that is, if you actually count the number of delegates won by Hillary Clinton, it is not enough to exceed the 2,382 delegates necessary. So she goes over the top because of the super delegates. And this relates to one of the articles I've posted on our website. It came yesterday, but I think it's still relevant. Sanders supporters angry as Clinton wins sufficient backing. And they're angry because the Associated Press before California even said, well, she has enough to put her over. Well, yes, she was put over by those super delegates, but those were not actually won, and they felt that in some respects that was done so that people would actually vote for Hillary Clinton in California, say, well, it's all over, so even though I was going to vote for Bernie Sanders, I'll vote for Hillary Clinton. Now, because it was proportional, yes, Hillary Clinton won 257 delegates last night out of California. Bernie Sanders won 188. But it could have been a lot closer, or Bernie Sanders could have won that particular contest if indeed the Associated Press had not published that. And Associated Press right now warns some of their reporters to be careful if one of the Sanders supporters might attack them in the street. So this is a very unusual election season, to put it mildly. But let's take some phone calls along the way. And we'll go first to the state of Arizona. Stephanie, thank you for calling today. What would you like to add to our conversation?
Well, I'm, driving. I'm out here in Kingman, Route 66, and every time that I hear this controversy between Hillary, I don't want to vote for either one of them. And a lot of the Arizonians, it's Republican state, and so they're diehard. They're saying, don't. If you vote for Hillary, I'll never speak to you again. But I've had to listen to all of the politics, and it's good to have changed. So anyone out there saying, you know what, there's no way I'm going to vote for Hillary and she's a liar and Trump is outside the box. But what they have to remember is what kind of change do they want from this person? And let the record show that, you know, he's, I hate to use the word pissed off a judge. You know, we're going with that racist comment remark. He's on Pocahontas. You know, how is he going to serve the free world? Come on, people. You know, it's pretty logical. You know, you got to put your passion aside and think person is going to lead our country, and it has to be in a democracy. Be something where he goes out there and says, you know, to hell with those people, I'm just going to blow up the world. And that's why I'm voting for Hillary, because whatever her faults are, you know, I feel that, you know, she's going to be able to stand steady. You know, she's going to be able to do foreign policy, and, you know, I'm going to own that. And even though I'm sitting in Arizona right now where everyone says that they're never going to speak to me again, that's how I feel about it. So,
would you have voted for Bernie Sanders if you had an opportunity or not?
No, never.
No, so it's
He's
Hillary.
Never.
Hillary, nobody.
Never.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, if we had the Green Party, if, you know, is Ralph Nader still around, I guess, you know, and like I said, I started with Trump because I'm almost 60 years old and I've gone through a lot of elections and I believe in fairness, and I kept going back and forth thinking, you know, this is terrible. I don't know what to do. But Hillary came out in the end, and Bernie should step back, you know, or the people that are voting for Bernie, you know, I admire them. He's a good guy. He's okay. But they have to think, just like when you do an interview, you have to think, you know, you're not going to like everybody's in office, but you have to respect that office. And her qualifications, you know, that's what puts her in that place. Trump, he's a loose cannon, and, you know, we have a lot of diplomatic relations all over the entire world. So I don't know. They have to rethink. They say he's outside the box, but how far outside of the box do you want to go, you know?
Yep. Well, I think we'll find out, and that's why there will be in a general election, and that's, of course, the way in which Hillary Clinton will try to portray him as a loose cannon out of the box. You mentioned the Green Party, just for people that are curious about some of the third-party candidates. That particular convention has not been held, but the odds-on favorite, probably Jill Stein, and that's with the Green Party. And just a little bit later in the program, for those of you that are curious, I'll give you an update on a couple of the third-party candidates. Now, will any of those third-party candidates win? No. Have we ever had a third-party candidate win the presidency? No. Have we even had anybody close? Have we even had a third-party candidate for the presidency win even one state? In other words, get even some electoral votes? The answer to that is no as well. So in many cases, they tend to be spoilers, but nevertheless, there is at least our first vote in that particular case for Hillary Clinton. I don't think in that particular case Stephanie's vote will matter either, because in the state of Arizona, as she pointed out, I think very accurately, it's primarily a Republican state. It's primarily a red state. I think it's reasonable to assume, unless the Trump campaign completely disintegrates, that those 11 electoral votes in Arizona will go for Donald Trump. But you just never know. This is a time when past history is not a present or future predictor, because in some cases there has always been the assumption that Democrats would always win New Jersey. There are some polls right now suggesting that Donald Trump could win New Jersey. Virginia, for some time, has been a toss-up state, but more recently has been won by the Democrats. Pretty good evidence that if these polls are accurate at all, that Donald Trump could win Virginia. So a lot of this, of course, depends on the Electoral College, and we'll certainly get into that in just a minute. But let me put a few of these so-called burning post-primary questions on the table that came from the Hill. And one of those, which Stephanie set us up for, was, can Donald Trump adapt to a general election campaign? Up until now, he's made all sorts of statements. You mentioned the one about the judge. I'm not seeing that as racist, but I'm seeing it as stupid, at least, because he was trying to, as we said the other day, work on the judge and get him to maybe rule in his favor on Trump University. But, nevertheless, that's one of those many out there, his statements about women. We can go down the long list. In just a minute, I'll read from David French, who has kind of a grocery list of all the problems with Hillary Clinton, as well as all the problems with Donald Trump. But one of the questions is, can Donald Trump adapt to a general election campaign? His speech last night, read from a teleprompter, was much less inflammatory, but still pretty light on some of the specifics. Then some of these others relate to what Stephanie was talking about. One of the questions, can President Obama unite the Democratic Party? There is great animus right now between certainly Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And so President Barack Obama and Senator Bernie Sanders are scheduled to meet at the White House this Thursday. That is tomorrow, at the senator's request. So we'll see what happens there. A third question, how tightly will Hillary Clinton embrace gender? Because this gets into this whole question of, helping people and honoring people who love in different ways. Well, if that gets translated as to, yes, we just need to make sure that men can go into women's restrooms all the time, there are a lot of Americans that are thinking that is a really bad idea. While we're spending some time talking about the Democrats, let's also look at another question that was raised by The Hill. Where do Bernie Sanders supporters go? If you watched last night, the speech by Donald Trump, he was welcoming Bernie Sanders supporters. And they might say, well, how could somebody who would support a progressive socialist liberal support Donald Trump, who at least is on some issues is conservative, others moderate? Well, it all had to do with the issue of trade and TPP and things like that, and really welcoming some of Bernie Sanders supporters to the Trump campaign and to actually get on the Trump train. So there's another one. And then, of course, what does the next wave of polls say? So these are just a few of the questions. I can maybe post that later, but these are questions a lot of people are asking, and they're very good questions because it relates to how you win the general election. Well, let's take a break, and when we come back, what we want to do is give a few more of you a chance to join the conversation. Going to talk about some of the people seriously talking about changing the convention rules in the Republican Party, and also some talking about a really divided Democratic Party convention, so it will be interesting all the way through the summer. But if you are receiving emails from me, you know that yesterday I sent a piece that was entitled, Will You Stand Up for Truth? And it was just a reminder that we're coming to the end of our fiscal year, which ends June 30th. And so right now, I'm really challenging you to think about what you can do to support this ministry so that we provide opportunities for you to speak to these issues, to hear from various guests, and to certainly be educated about all the topics that we address every single day here on Point of View. So I really encourage you to help me and join with me in this fight to help equip Christians across the country to really stand in the gap and address these issues. And our deadline, as I mentioned, is June 30th. And so we have an opportunity for you to respond to the email I sent out, or you can simply go to the website, pointofview.net. You'll see a banner there that says, Will you stand up for truth? And we have some of the issues that we find ourselves addressing every day. Abortion, assisted suicide, gay marriage, transgender bathrooms. Who thought we'd be talking about all these issues? And so we encourage you to make your gift, to click on there and to recognize that your gift will be doubled up to $10,000. So your gift of $100 becomes $200. Your gift of $250 becomes $500. So please take advantage of that. And even as we go to a break, it'd be a great time for you to visit the website, pointofview.net. We'll take some more phone calls right after this.
I had what many would call the Cadillac of insurance plans with my company. It covered everything, and that's what got us started thinking, well, what is everything? Are we indirectly paying for people to use services that we don't believe in or want to be a part of? And MediShare was the perfect answer for that.
I felt such relief switching over to MediShare. I wasn't paying for anything that I didn't believe in. I was actually able to stand up for what I believe in, and I was able to put my money where my faith is.
We're part of this great program, and it really costs us less than insurance.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your health care. For your free information guide, call 855-BIBLE-11. Not available in Montana. MediShare, affordable biblical health care. Call 855-BIBLE-11. That's 855-BIBLE-11.
Point of View Radio needs you in 2016. Join today at pointofview.net. Become a monthly partner. Pointofview.net. Or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Kerby Anderson.
If you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Who do you think you might vote for president? Of course, there are many months between now and November, but I'd love to get your thoughts about that. Some of you, I suspect, are going to talk about the fact that you have trouble voting for either of those candidates. We'll talk more about what are some of the pluses and minuses, but also I do want to give you a little bit of an update on some of the third-party candidates and some of the behind-the-scenes actions taking place, even trying to change the Republican convention rules. But let's go back to the phones, first of all, and talk to Kim in Kentucky. Thank you for calling today.
Hi. I was just calling because of the last caller was, calling Trump a loose cannon and everything. I'm for Trump, and I have been from the day one, because I truly believe he will bring America back to what, it used to be. I mean, a proud nation, and I believe he will make our military strong. And like last night I read a news article about this judge and the law firm who have ties to the
La Raza? It's the San Diego La Raza Lawyers Association, which, by the way, is different than the National Council of La Raza. La Raza, by the way, if you don't know Spanish, is the race. And so some people have said, well, maybe he does maybe have some bias. What a surprise. Liberal judges have bias. Yes, I think they do. So, but he probably didn't say it in the best of way, but go ahead.
Yeah, and as far as Hillary Clinton, I mean, Obama has destroyed our country. Obama has literally destroyed it. And Hillary Clinton has, in my view, and everyone I know personally, she has murdered American citizens. And it breaks my heart because I come, there's a lot of people in my family that are military. She's killed military soldiers. She's killed our soldiers. These are fellow Americans, and it really breaks my heart that every American, young or old, can stand by someone who has caused the death of our fellow Americans. And him and her and Obama, they're letting our enemies just come through the back door, and it really surprises me because when these people who are so, Hillary this, Obama this, who are they going to call to help them when one of these, illegals or, the radical Muslims, come after them and hurt them or one of their family members, And Hillary here, she wants to take away our Second Amendment rights, and that is the only thing that has kept our country safe. Maybe if Iraq and places like that were able to defend themselves and carry, have the right to bear arms, ISIS wouldn't have been able to take over so, easily. And I know a lot of Americans who feel the same way, and it just amazes me that. And talk about this woman does nothing but lie. And in my eyes, she's the true racist. My grandchildren are biracial, and I really take offense to her using race to get votes. All that woman cares about is power, and her record proves it. She has enabled her husband, raping, accosting women, and then her calling them bimbos. And then now she wants to turn around and say, oh, she wants women to speak up. And for her to say that women are against Trump, oh, no. I know, like I said, I do not personally know one person that is for Hillary Clinton.
Well, we did have some on the air. Kim, I'm going to go on and let a few...
personally.
Yeah. Let me just mention that you're in the state of Kentucky. Probably 8 electoral votes are probably going to go for Donald Trump again. Those are states that probably are not going to be those kind of, if you will, battleground states. But those of you that are listeners right now in Virginia or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, Ohio, New Hampshire, Iowa, Florida, Colorado, and Nevada, that's really going to be where the battleground will probably take place. Sometimes people say, and I know our next caller is going to talk about not really feeling like you have a choice. If you live in some of these states where it's pretty obvious that Hillary Clinton is going to win, California with 55 electoral votes, New York with 29 electoral votes, they're going to vote Democratic no matter what vote you vote, at least as a for the presidential candidate. You can go to other states like Texas, for example, and Texas, 38 electoral votes, most likely going to go for Donald Trump, and some of the ones we just mentioned like Arizona, Kentucky, also will go there as well. But
the place where your vote is probably going to matter a whole lot more, given the fact we have an electoral college, will be in some of those battleground states. And I might mention, even as we do spend most of our time talking about the presidential election, it is even more important for you to pay attention to some of these senatorial races. I'd have to say that at least 11 of the 34 U.S. Senate races this time could be somewhat competitive. And when you look at the House of Representatives, maybe at least 33 out of 435 could be competitive. Sad that so few are competitive. So some of those votes are going to matter a great deal. And by the time you get to the 44 states that have elections for state legislature, those are really going to be important. So pay attention, even if you feel a little bit discouraged about who is at the top of the ticket. So that's why I thought I would go to Rhonda, because I think you're going to, in a sense, represent what I'm sure millions of Americans are feeling. So Rhonda, you have the floor.
Well, like you said, I don't feel like we have any candidates that are going to do us any good right now. And my choice right now is none of the above. However, I am going to pray about it and try to let the Lord lead me to what candidate He wants in there.
Well, that's a good way to go about it. Let me keep you on for just a minute, because David French is one of the individuals that thought seriously about running as a third-party candidate. He was tapped by a number of individuals, and even Mitt Romney was making a case for him and others. He wrote a piece that we posted just the other day, and I've posted it here again, why I'm not running for president. I'm going to skip why he didn't run for president, but he expressed it this way. And Rhonda, I want to see if this resonates with you. In his fourth paragraph, he said, Hillary Clinton lies habitually and changes position on virtually every public issue except for her pro-abortion extremism. And she has a suspicious record of making public decisions that favor donors to the Clinton Foundation. Her signal foreign policy achievement was helping launch a war in Libya that not only cost American lives in Benghazi, that's kind of what Kim was talking about a minute ago, but also helped transform the nation into ISIS' latest playpen. He says, to add all that, she's in the middle of an active FBI investigation. If I handled classified information the way we know she handled classified information, my career would already be over, and the single goal of my life would be persuading the prosecutor to reach a lenient plea bargain. So that's what he says about Hillary Clinton. Now, here's what he says about Donald Trump. He says Donald Trump also lies habitually, sometimes minute by minute, and changes position based on his moods. In one breath, he claims to support working men and women, and then with the next breath, he threatens to destroy our economy through trade wars or playing games with the full faith and credit of the United States. He believes an American judge, a man born in Indiana who spent months hiding from drug cartels after they'd put a hit on him, can't rule on a case involving Trump University because the judge's parents emigrated from Mexico, which kind of gets back to one of the comments Stephanie made just a minute ago. Then he goes on to say his supporters believe he demonstrates strength when he mocks the disabled and bullies women. He has attracted an online racist following that viciously attacks his opponents and their families, including my wife and youngest daughter. So that's kind of the summary from David French, who thought seriously about whether or not to run as a third-party candidate. Does any of that resonate with you, Rhonda?
All of it.
And that's kind of where we find ourselves, isn't it? So I appreciate you calling. Let's, if we can, take a break, and then when we come back, let's take some more phone calls. 1-800-351-1212. There are a lot of people in the Republican Party saying, you know, we just can't run with Donald Trump. And even if he got a record number of votes and he has more than enough delegates, we've got to figure out some way to change the convention rules. And that was the argument made today on air by conservative talk show host Hugh Hewitt, in which he argued that the Republican Party should make an unprecedented effort to change the Republican National Convention rules to allow them to dump Donald Trump as their nominee. So we'll come back and get into what he said and the possible reaction to that. And if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Who do you think you might vote for? What about this idea of dumping Donald Trump? when you have so many individuals that voted for him, so many delegates that are pledged to him at the Republican convention. And then we might not be able to get to it until the second hour. I want to talk a little bit about some of these third-party candidates that are out there, because some people say, well, I couldn't vote for either Hillary Clinton. Of course, you're in a sense getting two, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, or Donald Trump. But what about these third-party candidates? And there's still been a push to try to find someone that provides an alternative to Donald Trump. So we'll see how that plays out. It's going to be an interesting summer, and I hope you'll stay tuned every day to Point of View so we can try to make sense of it. We'll be right back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
If you'd like to join our conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. Really want to thank our last three callers because I couldn't have choreographed this any better. Had one individual is going to vote for Hillary Clinton, another is going to vote for Donald Trump, and another one said, I'm not sure I could vote for either of them, and that's exactly kind of the conversation we're having today. And one of the issues I want to put on the table is because of the comments today by conservative talk show host Hugh Hewitt, who is certainly a somebody. I mean, after all, he was one of the individuals asking a number of questions during the Republican debates, said that it is time to change the rules in the Republican convention so that the Republican delegates could dump Donald Trump as their nominee. He said it's like ignoring stage 4 cancer. You can't do it. You got to go attack it. And right now, the Republican Party is facing the plane is headed towards the mountain after the last 72 hours. He went on to say that he disagreed with Republican senators like Lindsey Graham and Mark Kirk, who said they could not vote for their party's nominee. He says, I want to support the nominee of the party, but I think the party ought to change the nominee because we're going to get killed with the nominee. And he says, I've never stressed that, meaning I've never really said I wouldn't vote for the party nominee. He says, I waited until after the primary was over, but now he's making these comments. And he said they ought to get together and let the convention decide. And if Donald Trump pulls a makeover in the next 4 to 5 weeks, great, they can keep him. It would be better if he'd done that 5 weeks ago. But he also called either for a replacement of Donald Trump by changing the rules or else a major personality transplant in Trump Tower. Unless something changes, he warns Republicans are headed for disaster. So that's what's out there today from an individual that I respect and an individual that if you watched any of the debates, probably had a chance to see, Hugh Hewitt. So let's get your comments here. We'll head out to Texas, KBJS. Maxine, thank you for joining our conversation today.
Thank you for taking my call. I listen to your program every day, and most of the time I support what you do, but you used to kind of hide it a little, but anymore you don't. Your slant and bias against Trump. The fact is, the people of this country have chosen him. They voted for him just the way he is. He has more than enough delegates to get the nomination on the first vote. And in conventions past, we have had such weak, useless, incompetent candidates.
That's for
we
sure.
got Obama for 8 years. Now we have somebody, maybe you don't like him personally. Maybe I don't like him personally. That doesn't mean he can't do a good job. And to change the rules at the last minute because the establishment, in parentheses, doesn't like him is just, it should be illegal. You can't just change the rules at the last minute because the higher-ups don't like this guy.
Frankly, I don't think it's going to work, but I'm surprised that Hugh Hewitt's been talking about it. So, again, I just wanted to report it. I'm not necessarily agreeing with that, but I certainly am wanting you to know that that's become kind of the big issue of the day that I haven't even heard the mainstream press spend much time talking about. But go ahead.
If they're going to do this, why did they even have the primaries? If the people's vote counts for nothing and these people can change it at the last minute, why did they even bother to have all these primaries? Why did they lie to the American people and say your vote counts? If they kick Donald Trump out, that absolutely means that your vote does not count.
Yeah, I think it'd also be the end of the Republican Party, don't you think?
I think the Republican Party is pretty much done anyway.
I think there's going to be pieces that maybe hopefully somebody will pick up and come up with something a lot better. I think the Republican Party is headed sort of the way the Whig Party was in the 19th century. And we even had a guest on the program a year ago, even before Donald Trump ran, suggesting that he thought it's quite possible that there may be such a reevaluation of the party process that in the 20th century we might look back at what we're talking about here today and seeing that sort of as a footnote, because there are a lot of people that say, I don't really want to be a Republican or a Democrat because I just don't find too much that I agree with. And unless we come up with maybe a multi-party system where individuals can actually find agreement on more than one or two issues with individuals that are running, I don't see these parties continuing on. But at the moment, they have the money and they have the prestige. And as I pointed out a minute ago, you've got some that are even suggesting change the rules. I think if you change the rules, you would lose for sure because you'd have so many angry people that have supported Trump. I mean, there are a lot of people on the Trump train right now.
Yes, and I don't think the majority of people arguing these fine points back and forth, I don't think they realize just how much trouble this country is in. We are in deep, deep trouble here. We're on the verge of losing everything. And it's going to take a real bulldog to turn this around, somebody with guts, somebody that is not politically correct, somebody that's not afraid of other world leaders, somebody that won't go over and on bended knee and apologize for dropping the bomb. I didn't hear anybody apologize for Pearl Harbor. You know, I haven't heard anybody apologize for 9/11. And this is the kind of rage that a lot of Americans are feeling right now. I'm not the only one. That's why Trump has those delegates.
That's right.
Because there are millions of people like me who have to work every day. We don't have the time to get involved in these movements. Nobody's paying us to go protest and beat up the opponent's supporters. We have to go to work and make money because somebody's got to pay taxes. And we are mad. We are really, really mad. We don't have to like Trump as a person. We just have to think that he's the one that can turn it around, because I'm for sure don't believe any of the other candidates could do anything about it. I spent years raging against Obama for all the things he was doing until suddenly I realized, hey, the Congress and Senate are going right along with him. He couldn't do these things without them. And they're Republican-controlled now. And they're still doing nothing. This man has literally broken over 2,000 laws. And nobody is holding him accountable for even one law that he's broken.
Well, again, I think you can make the case that the Donald Trump phenomenon in large part is due part to certainly Barack Obama, but the other part due to a do-nothing Congress that never really challenged President Barack Obama.
I'd like to see their approval rating. I wonder if
it's lower than used car salesmen. I've mentioned it before. I'll see if I can dig it up here. Oh. I mean, it is embarrassing how little respect members of Congress have right now from the public.
I know there's one or two good ones, but one or two can't get it done.
Well, I try to bring a few of the good ones on, but we just need a lot more of them. Maxine, I'm coming to a break, but you made a good case, and I appreciate you listening. I think you misunderstood why I brought some of these stories here, but that's okay. You know, it's a point of view, and you are allowed to have your point of view and express your opinion. We have a full bank of phone calls, and unfortunately, I'm coming to a break, but if some of you can hang on, I will give you an opportunity to express your opinion right after the break, and we'll get into, in the second hour, if we have some time, some of the third-party candidates. Some people have wanted to know, well, who is this Gary Johnson, a Libertarian Party, and some of the others? I don't think any of them have a chance of even getting an electoral vote, but we'll see. And at least I wanted to educate you about that, since that question comes up from time to time. But let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to spend some more time taking your phone calls. And if you would like to support this ministry, because we do provide you with a national platform to express your opinion, I hope that you might visit our website, pointofview.net. Click on that banner that says, "Will you stand up for truth?" as we address all sorts of issues, from abortion and gay marriage and assisted suicide and transgender bathrooms and all sorts of things that maybe even 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago, we wouldn't even think we'd be talking about, but we are. We're trying to equip and educate the next generation, so your financial support would be helpful. And, of course, we have a $10,000 match on the table, so before now and the end of our fiscal year on June 30th, we'd certainly encourage you to take advantage of that. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll take some more phone calls. 1-800-351-1212. As a caller drops off, you can join us here on Point of View. We'll be right back.
I want you to be honest for a minute. 10 years ago, did you think the Supreme Court would ever dare to redefine marriage? That a president would threaten schools unless they permit males to shower with your daughters, told hospitals they must do abortions and sex change procedures or lose federal money? Did you honestly foresee any of this? We must stand together today and defend our liberties, or in the next few years, the nation will be transformed in ways we can't imagine. Please, please, join Kerby and Point of View Radio and defend what's right. We have a June 30th deadline, the end of our fiscal year, and it's critical we finish this month on firm financial terms. Partner with us. Give the most generous gift you can, and right now, it will be doubled up to $10,000. Give online at pointofview.net or call 1-800-347-5151. Thank you for standing with us to defend faith and family. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Second hour today, and if you just joined us, we spent a little bit of time in the first hour here talking about, again, this is a historic campaign, but also some of the questions for candidates and also some of the evidence that is now surfacing that at least some will try to change the convention rules. I think it would be disastrous, but nevertheless so that they could dump Donald Trump from the Republican convention. Don't see that happening, but did want to report that. And as I mentioned in the first hour, I couldn't have choreographed this any better. First caller supports Hillary Clinton. Second caller supports Donald Trump. The third caller says, I'm having trouble coming up with anybody that I could support on the presidential side. And we've taken some other calls since then. And another thing that has surfaced certainly is a lot of you, and I agree with you, are very concerned about the future of this country and recognizing that it's going to take some tough leadership to turn some of this around. I hope that we haven't reached a tipping point and are past the point of no return, but it's going to take someone who is willing to break some eggs, some individual that's going to be willing to be a little less politically correct, willing to take on the establishment on both parties and to really get some things done. So if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. As I promised before the end of the program today, I want to also just at least educate you briefly about some of the third-party candidates, because I think they might have an influence in this election as well. But let's go to the state of Texas first. KAVX and Howard, thank you for calling today. I've got a little trouble hearing Howard there. Let's put Howard on hold, see if we can get a better call from him. So we'll stay in Texas, KAVX, and we'll go to Mark. Mark, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Kerby, for taking my phone call. I really appreciate it. I enjoy your show. I just wanted to make a comment. You know, I grew up in a home of yellow dog Democrats. I mean, my family voted for every Democrat under the sun, voted for Jimmy Carter twice, if you can believe that. And I myself am a Republican. I've always been a Republican. But in this election, my conscience will not let me vote for Donald Trump. And I've been listening to the people that you've had on your program, and it really disappoints me, the thoughts that are coming. I realize people are desperate. I realize that we're in desperate times, but all I hear people concerned about are two things, the two M's, money and military. And they're looking for a man who's going to give money and give military and give might, but they're looking to a man who has no morality. And I think it was John Adams who said that a democracy is only as good as the people that are in it, as the people themselves. If we can't govern our own selves, then we can't expect to have government. Democracy is based on that. This republic is based on that. And so I look at a man like Donald Trump, and here is a man who has not governed himself at all. He has been a philanderer. He's done well somewhat in business. He changes his views. We have no idea who this man is going to appoint to the Supreme Court. We have some major positions to fill. We have no idea who he's going to appoint to positions. It's going to affect the rest of this nation's history. I think these people that are desperate need to look beyond the money and the military, and they need to think about the person's morality, and can that person actually lead us? And I think we need to consider that when we go into the vote parties. I know every time I voted for President of the United States, there's been multiple choices presented to me. And so my wife and I were talking as believers, and she said, I just don't think that I can vote for Trump. I certainly can't vote for Hillary. What do you think we should do? And I said, vote your conscience. It's not about lesser of two evils. It's about not choosing evil at all and doing what you have to do. And if that means that you write in Ted Cruz or someone else or this French gentleman that you were discussing, I think that's what we need to do. And by the way, I think, one of your callers said the people chose Trump. Well, quite frankly, the people and their choosing has never gotten it right. They chose Barabbas over Jesus. They chose Hitler by an election. They chose Barack Obama, and we got what we chose. And now we're going to choose somebody else. I don't really trust the majority and the masses. And I think those of us that are believers need to be conscious. We need to be clear when we go into that voting booth. And we need to not worry about the lesser of two evils. We need to worry about what's right. So that's just my comment. And I'm discouraged hearing all these desperate people holler about bread and water. And we got to have a candidate that's going to give us bread and water. And it smacks of the October Russian Revolution and the Germany post-World War I. And we need to get that thinking out of our head, and we need to do what's right and stay the course. Just my opinion. Thank you, Kerby.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Let me put two things on the table that might be worth talking about. One, as Mark said, we really don't know who he would appoint to the Supreme Court. True. I mean, one of the arguments that I heard from Newt Gingrich a while back is, we really don't know how Donald Trump will govern because Donald Trump doesn't know how he will govern. But to his credit, let's give credit where credit is due, he did put out a list of 11 judges that he would say would be part of the pool that he would put into the Supreme Court. Now, if you listened to our program last Friday, Kelly Shackelford and I spent a little bit of time talking about those 11 judges, and we concluded that 9 out of the 11 were really good. I mean, as a matter of fact, we know some of those. Then we had 2 that we had a question about. One that was surfaced even by one of our callers because Judge Pryor was one of those. But I'd have to say that even the 2 that we had a little question about probably could be considered to be as good, if not better, than Judge John Roberts, who is our Chief Justice. So if indeed he's pulling from that pool, that helps because a lot of people say, okay, I may not like who you are, but maybe you're going to put the right people in position, and that might affect policy. After all, personnel is policy. So, I think over the next couple of weeks, it gets back to the comment made by Hugh Hewitt. Either there has to be a personality makeover, or we need to dump him, is what he was basically saying from the ticket. I don't think it's going to happen, but let's come back to that first point. The next couple of weeks, Donald Trump could help himself with certain individuals, maybe not all, by helping us understand who really would be your Secretary of Health and Human Services, who would be your Defense Secretary. How do you see making those decisions? You've told us a little bit about who indeed would be on the Supreme Court, and I can see that that's a remarkably different set of judges than indeed the Hillary Clinton would have. Matter of fact, I ran into somebody today and he said, well, the Supreme Court's really important to me, and we know pretty much what Hillary Clinton would do, but we really don't know what Donald Trump would do. And I said, well, that's not really true. Of all the candidates that has ever run for president, he's the first one that I know of that said, no, I'm going to pick most likely my Supreme Court justices and my federal judges out of this pool. And after looking at those 11 that came from the Federalist Society, Kelly Shackelford and I had to say, those pretty good. So, maybe more of that might convince some people that are on the fence, even if they have, as Mark aptly pointed out, real questions about his character and his lifestyle. So that may not convince some, but it's one of those points I thought I would put on the table here. And we'll take a break and come back and take some more phone calls. If you'd like to join the conversation today, we'll certainly take phone calls till the end of the program. And because Mark raised it, I will tell you when we come back from the break briefly about a few of the third-party candidates that are indeed out there. In case anybody would like to know more about them, we'll certainly give you that information. All that coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
A third of all young adults are single, broke, and living in their parents' home. That's how some are describing the latest results from the Pew Research Center study of the millennial generation. More young adults are now living with their parents than with a spouse or a partner. This is a tipping point for the first time in modern history. About 32% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 34 are living in their parents' home, compared with 31% who are married or living with a partner in their own household. The remaining 36% live alone, are single parents, or live in dorms or with other relatives. One researcher explained that this was a much different transition from previous generations. In the past, setting up new families was more typical than what we find today. In many ways, this shows the postponement of marriage. This is likely due to both lifestyle choices and economics. It's worth noting that some of these trends were taking place before the economic downturn 8 years ago. But economics is another obvious reason for more young people living at home. They face a difficult labor market and therefore are unable to live independently. That is why fewer and fewer of them are married or even living with someone. These economic realities are even worse for men without a college degree and for people of color. The highest percentage of men living with parents are black and Hispanic men. The lowest percentage are men with college degrees. Wages for all men have stagnated over the last few decades, and the labor participation rate has dropped significantly. None of this is helping improve the housing market or other aspects of the economy. If you don't own a home, you aren't likely to be spending money on appliances, furniture, and other household items. All of this merely demonstrates that the image of a millennial living in his or her parents' home isn't just a stereotype, it's reality. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kerby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back once again, if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Mark talked about third-party candidates. Let me give you just a brief rundown. I'll just look at the four possible candidates that might influence this election. And the first of those is the Libertarian Party. Gary Johnson is the Libertarian Party candidate. He was the governor of New Mexico. Now, that's important because in the previous election, the 2012 election, the Libertarian Party actually were able to bring in 1.2 million votes. So that could have an impact. Here's how. Imagine that for the first time in a century, we split up the electoral votes in a way that has never happened. Either it is Republican or Democrat. But what if you had Republican, Democrat, Libertarian? Just hypothetically for a minute, let's assume that Gary Johnson picks up enough votes that he could win in New Mexico. It's only 5 electoral votes, but all of a sudden now that changes things because you need 270 electoral votes to be the next president of the United States. Now, it is theoretically possible that you could actually come up with 268 to 268 tie. So the point I'm making is that it is possible that, say, Hillary Clinton, assuming that she starts out with, the requisite 217 electoral votes. In other words, she gets all of the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington. She gets the upper Midwest, Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan. She gets New York, Maine, Vermont, those kind of states, which normally you would assume that the Democrat would get. Then you assume that the Republican, Donald Trump, gets most of the South, all the southern states, all the Midwestern states, and then he picks up maybe Colorado, Iowa, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Virginia. it could be possible then that just by winning one state's electoral votes, nobody gets the requisite 270 electoral votes. Well, then what happens then? Well, you go to the 12th Amendment of the United States Constitution. It then goes to the House of Representatives, and then each state gets one vote. So no longer is California getting more votes than, say, Rhode Island. They're all getting one vote. So now this actually becomes in the favor of what? Donald Trump, because there are more red states than there are blue states. There are more states that might have voted for him, and he could be elected there. But some people have said, isn't it possible that at that point they could vote for somebody else? No, because if you go back, and this was the question that Kelly Shackelford put on the table back on Friday, you can only vote for the top three. So you could vote for either Donald Trump, you could vote for Hillary Clinton, you could vote for Gary Johnson. So anyway, Gary Johnson has been the governor of New Mexico. He actually the other day said that he decided, because he was running as a presidential candidate, to stop smoking marijuana, and promised that if he was elected president, he would not smoke marijuana in the White House. Very good. Number two would be the Green Party. I just mentioned that a few minutes ago. Jill Stein is probably going to be the nominee, but the convention has not been held. They got about 500,000 votes last time, so they could be significant. The third would be the Constitution Party, which used to be much more significant back in the days when you had Howard Phillips running it, but Darrell Castle, who is a Marine who served in Vietnam and has worked on a variety of issues, actually this time is running. And last time the Constitution Party got about 122,000 votes. And then just to be fair, let me get one more. The Independent American Party, that's Farley Anderson. And last time they got about 122,000 votes. And then you go even down to very small numbers like the Socialist Party, 9,000 votes and the rest. So the most significant third-party candidate right now would be Gary Johnson. And significant not because I think he will win the presidency or that he has any chance, but because he was governor of New Mexico, it would be theoretically possible he could win New Mexico, or in other places, because people that might have voted for Donald Trump instead vote for him, might actually see a change in some of the states. Or when we talk about the Green Party, some who might have voted for Hillary Clinton decide to vote for the Green Party. So in some ways, those particular third-party candidacies do have an impact. And so it's really important to kind of see how that plays out. Let's go back to the phones, though, and we'll go to the state of Florida, a very important swing state, 29 electoral votes. And David, thank you for calling today.
Yes, sir. How are you doing today?
Very good. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm supporting Donald Trump, and the reason why, he's a no BS kind of man. He says what's on his mind, and that's what he means. You got people like Hillary Clinton, who's done her little scandal with the top secret emails. No big deal, everybody's brushing under the table Clinton, so it's okay. And then what really got me with that woman was when Benghazi happened, and the 4 troops, or the 4 Americans were killed, her comment, what does it matter? Now, I come from a family that has served in the United States military for every war that this country's ever fought. Both my brothers are still currently active duty. And for that woman to say that and even think about running as president, how can people vote for somebody like that?
Well, and that is, again, you talked about military. Of course, we just had some comments about that from Mark. But again, it's something to think about. You are talking about a commander-in-chief. And it's interesting. Somebody said that if this had been the Republican, you would have seen a headline to say, candidate under federal investigation wins the nomination for president. But of course, because she's a Democrat, nobody says that. But it's something that is still over her head. And one of the reasons why I've talked about the rule change in the Republican Party, there's a lot of talk about whether or not in Philadelphia, in the Democratic Party, they'll still try to come up with something else. They're talking about whether or not they'd parachute in Joe Biden or Elizabeth Warren or, somebody like that.
Yes,
so we're going to have a very interesting summer coming up here.
And my next point with old Hillary Clinton there, she's all, let's get rid of the Second Amendment. Now, is she going to put on a uniform and join the guys that are going to come try to take the firearms from the American citizens that are law-abiding American citizens? There's 80 million of us that own firearms, 7 trillion rounds of ammunition. Is she going to put on a uniform to come try to take our guns from us? Because that will cause a revolutionary war in this country.
Yep. Well, again, a lot of you have mentioned this issue of Second Amendment, and this is not necessarily in Hillary Clinton's favor, because right now, if you look at some of those contested elections, for example, I'll just pick the House for the moment, 33 House seats where you really have some vulnerability. The ones that are actually up for re-election, most of them have a rating from the NRA. And if indeed people vote based on Second Amendment issues, it's quite likely that those individuals will be reelected, and some of the other incumbents will be defeated if they don't have a good rating from, say, the NRA. When you go to the Senate, the same sort of thing. And of course, there are a number of states right now which, if they are become concerned about this issue of Second Amendment, are less likely to go towards Hillary Clinton. So that's another one of those issues we will certainly be talking about between now and November. But David, first of all, thank you for the service of those that are in your family that serve this nation. And I just want to give a few more a chance to join the conversation today. So let's, if we can, go to Bill in Texas. It says here you voted for John Kennedy. Is that true?
Yes, sir. And that's my first election. I was 22 years old, and if he had not been assassinated, we would have not lost 58,000 men in Vietnam.
Yeah, probably true.
We got Horse Thief Johnson in there, and they made millions of dollars. Then he put us in a great society, which started the ball to roll into where we are now. I hope and think that it will be a landslide, okay, for Trump. I've joined the Young Republicans back when Bush the elder was president, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, they got him to say, read my lips. And, of course, the Democrats, I don't see how you could be honest and vote Democrat unless it's your pocketbook. I understand a lot of big business voted that way. I've got a lot of Jewish friends, and I give them hell all the time, okay? They vote their pocketbook.
And you're one of those people that sees a difference between, say, the Republican platform and the Democratic platform. I sometimes have people call and say, well, there's no difference. And I'm thinking, really? Just on Second Amendment abortion issues alone? I mean, not to mention the issue of transgender, same-sex marriage. I can go down this long list in which the differences between the Republican platform, which I assume Donald Trump's going to at least try to follow, and the Democratic platform that Hillary Clinton and her minions will actually craft are going to be so different as to not even have any points of commonality.
Well, Donald's right. Hillary should be in jail. Let me tell you about Bubba. I married a lady from Tennessee in '93, and she ran around in those circles. She's a good friend of Claude Wampus' secretary.
Well, let me put you on hold. We're coming to a break, and I want to hear the story, but I've got one of those mandatory breaks, and the clock waits for no one. So, Bill, can I put you on hold? I'll come back and hear that story real quickly, but I need to take a break. And if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. We'll come back and hear Bill's story and take some more calls right after this.
Did you know there's an approved healthcare choice just for Christians that's founded on the timeless principles in God's Word? It's not insurance. It's Medishare. Over 189,000 believers across America who love God and share each other's healthcare bills. It's about half the cost of health insurance, and you never pay for medical practices that go against your Christian beliefs. Best of all, the healthcare law includes a special provision for Medishare members, so you don't have to buy insurance or face penalties. Medishare is affordable health care without compromise.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your health care. For your free information guide, call 855-BIBLE-11. Not available in Montana. Medishare, affordable biblical health care. Call 855-BIBLE-11. That's 855-BIBLE-11.
Cast your vote today for Point of View Radio. Please become a monthly partner at pointofview.net, pointofview.net, or call 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You're listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour, you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Let me just mention that we'll also have a little bit of an open line tomorrow. In the first hour, we are going to be spending just a little bit of time in a short segment talking with Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin about the fact that he was disinvited from speaking at Fort Riley, the Big Red One. We'll talk with him briefly about that. But most of the time, we'll still give you a chance to express your opinion about some of the topics we're speaking to here, the various candidates in the presidential election. So if you don't have a chance to get through today, we'll certainly do some of that tomorrow as well. Bill, you have the floor, and you wanted to tell us a story real quickly. Make it quick, because I want to get to a few other callers that I can see would love to express their opinions as well.
Yeah, first of all, kudos to you and your program. O'Reilly's got where he's got soft, and Megyn Kelly, I swear, is a Democratic mole. Hannity calls it like it is. I loved it when he got all the bimbos, as the lady running presidents call them. I wonder what she says now. Anyway, before I married this lady, she was in society, there it was, in Arkansas, ran around with the secretary to Claude Wampus, the senator then. And Billy, Bubba followed her all over DFW, even missed his plane talking to her. Best looking woman he ever hustled. Don't ask me about Bubba, but, I
hear he's still dating again, so we're going to have issues if Hillary Clinton becomes president. We'll be wondering what Bill's doing from time to time. But
well, listen, is it true? Is it true he's running around with a guy that has an island where they keep underage ladies, girls?
Those are scandals that anybody else doing those would certainly be front page news, and yet press has been fairly willing to protect the Clintons, and I got a feeling Donald Trump's going to try to uncover some of that and expose some of it. So we'll see how this campaign plays out.
Again, thank you for. Hey, Donald calls it like it is. Okay.
Yeah.
I predict it might be a landslide for Donald. I certainly hope so. My daddy told you couldn't deal with crazy people and liars. And if you're not one of them, I tell the lady, how can you be smart and be Democratic? Anyway, thank you for your
call. We'll take as many calls as we possibly can. So let's stay in the state of Texas for just a minute, and we'll go to, is it Elsa?
Yes.
Yes, you have the floor. What would you like to add to our conversation today?
Well, first I want to say I am not an American citizen, but I'm here legally. I came here legally as a student and stayed and love this country.
Great.
And very much appreciate what it stood for it. And I follow closely elections and the candidates. And I say that first because people think I'm being partisan because it's my candidate or that. It's not. I just, as an outside observer, because I'm not a naturalized citizen, I'm not allowed to vote, and I honor that. So I appreciate the opportunity to stay here and do what I do. But just as a born-again believer and observant of what's going on, I think about the people of Israel asking for a king and not caring what the king stood for it. In history, and just as a Christian, thinking character matters. And for me, it saddened me to say that people seems to be run by their pocketbook and their secular mentality versus a Christian principles to make these kind of decisions. We didn't have to come to this be the worst of two evils. We did have candidates so much better, and one in particular that just based on the history, you don't look at just what they're saying, but their pattern of voting and how they live their lives. And you have many resources these days that you can find that out, so you can make an educated decision. But we chose celebrity. I mean, when we say chose, a very small percentage chose Donald Trump because of all the number of people involved there. So when people say, "Oh, but the people voted," I mean, there's a very minuscule amount of people that actually voted for him. But because of the way the system is set up, by the time there was a decent choice to get to it, I mean, you probably can articulate better than I can why we got to him. But it wasn't because
started
we
with
all
17. We had more choices than we ever had before. When somebody says, well, we didn't have any choices, I'm saying, no, we had some really good choices.
Yes,
but they didn't go anywhere. I mean, some of them dropped out, like Scott Walker and Rick Perry, before we even had the first primary, which was sad because I think some of them had a lot to bring to the table. Some of those, as a matter of fact, a good number of the ones that we're talking about here, I've had a chance to interview, and so they're very quality individuals. And hopefully some of them will serve in a cabinet if indeed a Republican candidate like Donald Trump is elected. But you're right. And again, this is not new. Also, we have unfortunately seen this over the years that both in the Republican side and especially in the Democratic side, people vote their pocketbooks. And I think you have to pay attention to people's character. You have to recognize where they stand on the issues. You have to understand who they are going to put in power, because actually a president only has a limited amount of power, but has a great deal by the people he or she puts into those executive offices. So those are all important questions to ask. So
I have a couple more things to close this off. I think this reveals more about the heart of this nation, about the condition of the church, because the world, we expect them to vote their lack of understanding and discernment and principles. But the Christians, they choose like this. It just show, I think we are a church of Laodicea that is not hot or cold. It just goes with the wind as it sees fit. And they say, well, but Trump is going to do this or that. No, he won't, because unless God built the house. So when we choose a man expecting him to do it, God may permit him to be there, but we're going to reap the consequences of our choices. So this nation will not be judged based, it's going to be judged based on our choices. We are choosing this king, and we're going to have to live with the consequences. And I think it's a sad day for America. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And I've oftentimes said that those who have gone through the process of naturalization are the ones you really wish could vote, because oftentimes they understand so well what it means to be an American. And there have even been some requirements, and I've written about this in some of my commentaries, to say that before you graduate from college, you should be able to pass the citizenship test. And some are even saying before you graduate from high school, you should be able to pass the U.S. citizenship test. And wouldn't we be in a much better situation if all of us knew as much about our history and our government as people like Elsa have had to learn in order to be a U.S. citizen? But let's take some more phone calls here. We want to give as many of you a chance to join the conversation today. So we'll head to Florida this time. Again, a very important state, 29 electoral votes. Dennis, what would you like to add to our conversation today?
Yes, first of all, let me say I'm enjoying your program, but I was also wanting to say, too, that, out of all the choices we have, one choice is a write-in candidate. Now, I heard that mentioned a little bit before, but the problem is most of the time people write in names that really have nothing to do, like Superman or Mickey Mouse.
Yes.
I was wondering, on these write-in candidates, if a person wanted to become president, how would they get their name known enough to where they could become a write-in candidate?
Yeah, and that's the difficulty, because, I even mentioned these third-party candidates, and none of them, except maybe Gary Johnson, will be on all 50 ballots. I sometimes will have people call in and say, I can't believe that you haven't covered the constitutional party candidate. And I said, well, it's because he's not going to win. And they'll say, well, how do you know? I said, well, here's a simple one. He only qualified for 30 ballots. And this was something that, by the way, David French in the piece that we've posted today, Why I'm Not Running for President, points out as well. We have, for example, already missed the deadline to get your name on a ballot, say, in the state of Texas. Since I'm broadcasting from Texas, I know that. And a number of others are going to fade pretty quickly. So the possibility of coming up with a third-party candidate that is going to be viable begins to wane. And then, of course, back to your point, if somebody wanted to be a write-in candidate, that would be even more difficult, because, indeed, you just have to have kind of name identification. And this is one thing that's kind of interesting. You have basically almost 100% name identification with both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Most people knew who they were, and I think you could go out into the street and ask somebody who named just one Supreme Court justice, and you'd be lucky if 1 out of 10, probably 1 out of of 100 can name one. If you ask them who are the two candidates for the presidency, they probably can tell you both of them. You know, they know as much about them as they know about the Kardashians, which is, again, a sad commentary on where our American culture is. But a write-in candidate, and that's what I think David French actually dealt with. And again, it's the first article there that you can read, Why I'm Not Running for President. He was tapped by some of the people in the so-called neoconservative movement, but I know who David French is. Most of you have never heard him, never would know who he was. But everybody knows who Donald Trump is, and everybody knows who Hillary Clinton is. They have 100% name identification, which is usually an issue for almost any other candidate, but not for them. And so it will be an interesting election indeed. Let's take a break. I have lots of phone calls, and let me just mention, if you don't get on today, we'll have a fair amount of time tomorrow in the first hour. Even though we'll be talking with General Boykin, we'll have some time to get your comments about this election. So let's take a break. We'll come back with more right after this.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes. If you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Let's go to Shirley in Texas. Shirley, thank you for joining us today. I'd love to hear what you want to add to the conversation.
Oh, thanks for taking my call, Kelly. There's several things I want to point out. First of all, I never vote for Hillary Clinton if my life depended on it. I will vote for Trump. I think people are... this one guy that said he has no morals, he didn't mention Hillary. She has no morals either. She is for the bathrooms, transgender. She's for taking our guns away. She's for abortion. She's for everything that Christians should stand against. And if ISIS comes to my door, I want to be able to shoot them. But also, I want to ask you if you heard about a book that's being that's coming out on June 28th. It's called The Caucus Character.
Oh, sure. And we mentioned it briefly, and I'm going to do some commentaries on it. But yes, I am familiar with it, and it's quite an expose, isn't it?
Oh, well, yeah, I just read about it, a little bit of it. I immediately ordered it from Amazon, so I haven't got it yet. Well, it hasn't been released yet, but I do want to read it, and I hope a whole lot of other people read it too. That was that one thing that I wanted, and I don't think they're giving Trump. I mean, Trump is not going to go off and push the button and destroy the world. I mean, he's got more sense than that. I know he's pompous, you know, and maybe that's what we need, you know, a little bit more pompous in there. But as far as Hillary goes, you know, it takes a village. It doesn't take a village to raise a child. I disagree with that. Communists believe that. You know, socialists believe that, and we don't need any of that in our country. But that's the main thing I wanted to touch on was hope people will read that book, because I'm sure...
we'll see if we get the author on, too. Yeah, if you keep listening, because I have been able to get some advanced publicity. And, of course, it's very similar to some of the other interviews we've done on this program over the years. People, for example, that have been in Secret Service telling the story of what it's like to actually serve Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton or George W. Bush or Barack Obama, whoever it might be. And this one tells, again, sort of the inside story. So we'll certainly give you that opportunity to hear from the author and let you ask them questions as well. You know, Shirley mentioned, and a couple of you mentioned, this whole issue of the Second Amendment, and I think many of you know that I do a daily commentary, and if you don't download it, I would certainly encourage you to go to our website and do so. The one that I wrote for next week has to do with began to see how the Obama administration is trying to prevent individuals who are engaged in the legal sale of firearms from being successful. And it's a story that I tell of Luke Lichterman, who is the owner of Hunting and Defense in North Carolina, went to the bank, and the bank denied him services because he sells firearms. And he blamed a little-known program, which I have talked about briefly on this program, called Operation Choke Point. And it was launched a number of years ago by the Justice Department to fight fraud, and it does so by choking off bank services to programs and to various businesses that are engaged in illegal business. But it's also been used by this administration against industries they dislike, like gun sellers. And so here he has been an individual that had a personal account at Home Trust Bank. And all of a sudden, when the banker found out that he actually sold firearms, denied him any kind of bank privileges, he was looking in particular for what's called an automatic clearinghouse payment service. And so Lichterman, really smart at that point, said, well, okay, can you give me an example of another industry that Home Trust Bank wouldn't do business with? And the banker responded, well, pornography. And Lichterman said, wait a minute, I'm not a pornographer. I'm actually dealing with constitutionally protected goods. And if you think the banker was kidding, you need to look at the guidelines for Operation Choke Point. It lists categories of merchants that the agency considers high risk, and it includes words like firearms, ammunition, and pornography. Well, anyway, because of some of the publicity that's come out, they actually did provide those services. But I think it illustrates again that there are ways in which even without a direct assault on the Second Amendment, you see people even in this administration trying to prevent you from having your Second Amendment rights. So I think this is going to be a really big issue. But let's go back to the phones. I wanted to hear from somebody who comes from a Hispanic background. So let me go to North Carolina. Jose, give us your perspective here. Certainly a lot of questions have been raised about Donald Trump and how he's working with the Latino community. So what are your thoughts?
Right, yes. I immigrated legally to this country about 18 years ago. I waited about 11 years in Mexico waiting to immigrate to this country. You know, after so many years, then you just realize, okay, if it counts, it counts. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I was fortunate that, the the immigration system, which is slow, but we waited patiently 11 years. And we finally came here. The following years, I came to the United States. I joined the United States Marine Corps.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your service.
Bit of English that I knew at the time, but I wanted to be part of this country and, embrace the culture and be part of belonging to this nation. Obviously, if I want to come to this country, it's because I want to come here and I want to adjust my culture a little bit and be part of it, I didn't want to bring Mexico into the United States, and that's one of the things I'm really disappointed at what's going on. But the media doesn't talk about those things, There's a lot of corruption in Mexico. There's a lot of corruption in Latin America, and people don't talk about the immigrants that come through Mexico, and a lot of them don't even make it.
Yes, I know that. Now, are you thinking, I'd love to know who you would vote for. So you've come from Mexico, you've become a naturalized citizen, you served in the military. Again, thank you for your service. Who do you think you might vote for?
Oh, I am going to vote for Trump, that's for sure. For sure.
Well, what about all these people that say that Trump's anti-Mexican or anti-Hispanic or racist? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think so. He has never said that. He has really never said that. But I'll tell you one thing, that I am very legalistic, and I believe in the legal system. And one of the first things that people are running away from Latin America is because the countries are so corrupted. Yes. And here they're demanding something that is breaking the law, You can't just do that. You can have it both ways.
Yes. Well, I just about out of time, but Jose, I want to give you a final comment because, first of all, I really appreciate you coming to this country. You're the very example of the kind of individuals we would like to come to this country legally. And then thank you for your service in the military. So what would you say to some of our listeners out there that are still trying to figure out who they would vote for?
Well, it's about, think about where we come from. I mean, are we better off in those countries than this country? And do we want to go back to the ways things are run in the countries that we come from, like corruption, no respecting the law, and those are really things that we need to think about,
Sure.
And I'm here in this country, and I don't want to go back to my country. I mean, I love the culture, I love the people, but I don't love the corruption. And I don't love the way things run over there. You look at Venezuela. I mean, they're starving. I mean, and that's what the Democrats won. They won.
Yeah. Jose, I've got to go, but I appreciate you sharing that. And again, for those of you that didn't have a chance to get through the program today, we'll give you that opportunity tomorrow. We're going to be talking with General Boykin. You might remember that he was disinvited from speaking at the Big Red One, Fort Riley. So we'll talk with him briefly. But most of the time, we're going to devote to, again, some of the comments that some of you want to make about the voting, because we now have come to the end of the primary season and looking ahead to what the fall might bring. Just before we go, let me mention again that I've posted a banner for you to respond. And if you've appreciated even the conversation we've had today, some of the news and information, we've talked about some of the questions for the candidates, some of the third-party candidates, and all the ways in which we try to educate you and equip you, please go to our website that says Give Now and consider a donation. It will be matched up to $10,000, and we would greatly appreciate that. I want to thank Andrew and Tina and Catherine and Shamila for their help behind the scenes. Have a great day, and we will see you back here tomorrow.
I had what many would call the Cadillac of insurance plans with my company. It covered everything, and that's what got us started thinking, well, what is everything? Are we indirectly paying for people to use services that we don't believe in or want to be a part of? And MediShare was the perfect answer for that.
I felt such relief switching over to MediShare. I wasn't paying for anything that I didn't believe in. I was actually able to stand up for what I believe in, and I was able to put my money where my faith is.
We're part of this great program, and it really costs us less than insurance.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your health care. For your free information guide, call 855-BIBLE-11. Not available in Montana. MediShare, affordable biblical health care. Call 855-BIBLE-11. That's 855-BIBLE-11.
Point of View Radio needs you in 2016. Join today at pointofview.net. Become a monthly partner. Pointofview.net. Or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.